Hey, Frank, can you hear us all right?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Robert will be here in a minute, so I'm just going to give us a couple more minutes here.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good, Jacob. How are you?
Pretty good.
Who can you tell me who's here?
Oh, yeah, Leslie's here from Holly's office, and Julia and Lucas, and Frank's on Zoom, and Robert will be here in just a minute.
Okay. Let's say hello to everybody. Frank, you're on Zoom too?
Yeah, hi, Brian. How are you?
Good, good. Much better.
Great.
Well, yeah, Frank says he can bill you after.
Although after today, I don't know.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Yep.
Julie, do you have a copy you can email me of what you're working with?
Lucas, you want to cover that?
Yeah, Frank, I'll send you I'll send you the thing we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there today. I have a tax deadline Monday, last one of the year. All extensions due.
Oh yeah, no, I get that, Frank. No worries at all.
Next one, I should be able to be there.
Awesome.
Thanks, Frank.
Right. Serena just came to sign all the papers. Oh.
What?
She wants to know, did you get the living, wait, she faxed over a letter for the living.
Look at, hold on, just remind me. Yeah. I'm on Zoom, but I'll get back to it as soon as possible.
Okay. Oh, yeah, he'll give it to me after. I'll get it all together. Okay.
Lucas, what about the Excel?
Yeah, Frank, good question. So I don't have an Excel. I mean, I have an Excel file, but we're not going over the Excel file today. I want to really focus today, which I know is probably a little different than we've done in the past, is focus on all
Highlights.
the new stuff.
Like just the highlights.
Yeah, exactly. And then for next meeting, I will have the Excel that we can look at. I'll just want to, I want to get all the discussion out of the way with all these projects first of whether we
Okay.
want to.
All right,
how we rank them.
thank you.
Yep, good. Okay, thanks, Jake. Yeah, I didn't send an Excel around to anybody.
Okay, I just, then I got your description here, so I'm looking at it.
Thanks, Ray.
Good morning. It is 10:06 a.m. This is the regular budget work session of Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag
United States of America.
Thank you very much. Members present include myself, Chairman Jacob Pride, Vice Chair Robert Levenheim, Supervisor Brian Barrett via Zoom, Township Manager Julia Heilicke, Budget Finance Manager Lucas DiBartolo, and Leslie Pinto from Holly Corcoran's office, as well as Frank Safali, our Treasurer, via Zoom. So the order of business today is discussion with regard to our general fund and highway fund budget for 2023. The format this year is slightly different than years past. Typically, we had started line by line with discussion on literally everything, despite some items not changing as much. So here today, we're going to allow our budget and finance manager, Lucas, to guide us through some of his recommendations and the thoughts of members of the board as to what we want to do next year. And that will guide us into the line by line budget for next year. So that said, Lucas, take it away.
Thanks, Jacob. So this is my first budget session. So, anyone who has, input as we're going along here, please do feel free to jump in and provide, in case I'm missing something or something's not being seen. I'm very happy to have anyone jump in. So, going into this, I know we all aim for a balanced budget, increase or maintenance of all township services to all of our residents. And of course, we want to do all that without increasing taxes. That's our goal. What everyone has in front of you is a document. It goes through, I want to start out going through just an overview of our financial situation, talk about our different funds, talk about our bond, talk about our fund balance and revenue potential, if we needed to do anything with our revenue sources. And then on the last page, we'll talk about our expenditures and all the potential projects that everyone has brought up to me of things that we might need to do. And we're going to spend some time in discussion on those last projects on the last page, of ranking those projects of something that either we must do, something that we should complete but can push off for a year, or something that is not as important. And I'll talk about that ranking system that the supervisors will use as we get to that spot. Any questions so far? I will say that after we get through today, next week, everyone will get sent an Excel version of our budget for us to review at the following budget meeting. But today, if we can get through all this, that will be great. So starting out, an overview, I just want to do an overview of our funds. With our general fund, due to inflation, expense-wise, costs are going up. I'm going to budget for about a 5% increase across a variety of our expenses. Some of them are higher, some of them are lower based on actual numbers that we've gotten, such as for the Monroe County Control Center or some of our insurance costs going up. That I have actual numbers, I'll use those actual numbers as compared to just the estimate. But we are expecting increases in expenses, just due to the very large inflation we're seeing this year. In our liquid fuels fund, currently we have used this for large road expenses, but also we put a couple of smaller electricity, streetlight repairs, and other repairs of tools and machinery in this fund. Due to the expected projects we have upcoming with road construction and that taking pretty much all of the liquid fuels fund, we're going to have to move those smaller expenses into the general fund and budget for them there.
Lucas,
Yes.
do we have any estimate of how much more liquid fuels we're gonna get because the price of gasoline has been going so high?
Good question. I don't have that estimate in front of me. It looked very similar to last year, though. But yeah, I didn't see any pretty much differences. Estimated about 300,000 in liquid fuels is what I expect we're still going to get. And some of our road construction costs planned are from Ed and our roadmaster are 500,000 for the year. So it's going to take liquid fuels and if we do all those road projects, it's going to take out of the general fund as well. But we'll get to some of the ways we'll be able to fund that in a little bit. Professional escrow fees. So this is not a fund where we budget for planned expenses. This is the only purpose of this fund is for reimbursement of our solicitor and engineering fees. In the budget, we will estimate that some of these reimbursable expenses will not actually get reimbursed. So I will estimate for a small amount of that will still be expenses that will never get reimbursed for. But generally in this fund, we're not doing any budgeting. We also have 4 smaller funds totaling less than 40K. It's about $10,000-ish per these accounts. There's no planned expenses for any of these smaller funds. The goal of these smaller funds is really to determine the next steps for these funds and close them. Some of them have certain requirements of what we can use it for. Some of them are outstanding in some way, but we have a fees in lieu of open space, Rivers Edge Bike Park, Fair Share Road Improvement Fund, and a Parks and Rec Fund. And the goal is, not to budget for any of these funds. The goal is to close these and bring them into our general fund, or keep them as needed if they're for a very specific expense that they need to be left alone. Something that is new this year is something that I believe we need to create is a capital improvement fund. This might be separated between a capital improvement fund and a grant fund, depending on the DCED rules and how they recommend to me that we set this up. Basically, this capital improvement and grants fund, most of the grants we receive, if not all the grants we receive, are for capital improvements. So, if we can make it the same fund, we will. But we need to be budgeting for all of the, dollars that it costs to replace our roof and replace our vehicles, and we need to be budgeting for that and setting money aside for all that. Bond fund, I'm going to skip that for a second so we can talk about our bond. But looking at the capital reserves, so capital improvements and capital reserves. So right now we have about $12 million in township assets, according to our audit. We have about $4.5 million in accumulated depreciation, but you'll notice that we don't have $4.5 million set aside to replace our township assets, our building or our trucks or our roof, for instance. So this is growing at about $350,000 per year. And this is something that we're not currently setting aside adequate funds to cover these accumulated costs. If we don't set aside funds, at some point this is going to make us get more loans, make us issue more bonds, all of course with high costs to the township. So the goal is to develop a plan to budget for the replacement of all these capital assets, and any grants we receive will either adjust that replacement schedule, move things up or down the list. So grants will help with all this, but the goal is that whether we get grants or not, we need to budget for these replacements. And that's one of the projects that are on the end of the list here. Any questions or thoughts, or I'll keep going.
I think it's a good introduction.
So the bond issue. So we have currently a 2015 general issue bond. It has about $1.5 million in principal left and about $150,000 in interest left, ending in 2029. This bond is a callable bond, meaning that as of 2020 we were able to, and we are able to now call this bond in full and pay it off completely. I did discuss this with our bond counsel. They said, there's no drawbacks to doing this. Callable bonds have the interest rate, that investors are getting. It's built in, expected to be called. 92% of bonds that are callable are called. So, we have a couple options with this if we said we didn't want to call it. And I will review that here. So, in our people security account, we have about 1.4 million in there to pay off the bond. If we transfer another about 36,000 into that account, we'll be able to completely use that fund balance to call the bond and pay that off right away. That will save us about $130,000 in interest over the next 6 years. Currently,
That's amazing.
I'm sorry, you're throwing a lot of numbers at me. But if we transfer $36,000 into the bond now, how much will we save in interest?
130,000 in interest over the next 6 years.
Okay.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, tell me slow down.
That's terrific.
So, and that's if we decide to pay it off now. If interest rates, the other option, if we said we don't want to pay it off right now, is interest rates are rising. Right now, the account it's in is a very low interest account. It's not making us any money. If we said, hey, we want to move this into Pliget, Pliget interest rates are slightly higher than the bond. So somewhere between, assuming that this would remain the case, that Pliget interest rates would be higher than the bond interest rate for the next 6 years, somewhere between 20,000 and 35,000 we would earn in interest above and beyond the cost of the bond. So we have the option of doing that as well. Of course, who can predict the interest rates for the next 6 years? Who's going to watch that every year to see if it's how's the interest rate doing? The Pliget account adjusts interest rates pretty much every week, so it's not necessarily great to keep it. So for only $30,000, it max that it could save us. Additional above that 130,000 in interest, it might just be better to pay it off now. That bond is callable, and that's something that we would use that balance for rather than letting it sit. So that's something that I wanted to discuss and have these supervisors make a decision on today, if possible, or discuss today if there's further data needed.
I think for our fiscal health, it would be terrific to be able to pay off the bond. I think that the financial sector is doing its best to manufacture a recession into happening despite monthly job and wage growth. So, I'd rather not take another risk and see us lose out, because last time we tried to lock in a higher or wait for a higher interest rate, I think it was with People's, we had a nice rate for like 3 months and we had the option to lock it in for 6, and we opted only for 3, and then it went down again. I don't want to see that happening now because all these CEOs are on TV saying, oh, it's going to be a recession. I think it's great just to get the debt off our hands.
Yeah, I will say the highest interest rate we get right now from Pliget is about 3%. The bond rate is 2.15%, and it's moving up to 3%. I'm sorry, it's moving up to 2.9%. In a couple of years. So the difference is not great. You know, Pliget is the best investment we can do at the moment that would give us an interest rate beating the bond, but it's only barely beating it, you know, right now. So I definitely like what you're saying. Robert, Brian, any or you know, Frank, anyone, any thoughts?
Not yet.
Lucas, who's the financial advisor you're speaking with?
Yep. So the financial advisor for the bond, I don't remember her last name off the top of my head. It's Alyssa from PFM. That's the financial advisor for the bond. And then I also spoke with our contact person from Wilmington Bank, who's the sinking fund that we throw the money into for the bond. I haven't connected with the law firm that was used to get the bond originally in 2015 merged into another law firm. But the financial advisor has no concerns of you know, starting the process to pay it off. It's you know, we would have to say, hey, you know, 30 days, you know, at least 30 days from now, we'd have to say we want to pay it off. We would have to, you know, then all the bonds would be called. We would, you know, throw the money into the Wilmington sinking fund account. It would pay it off, and that would be the end of that. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, kind of. There are two gentlemen I used to deal with. Henry Salusi, I guess. He was from the firm out of Scranton, and he had an advisor that he also used. I don't have it in front of me, so
Okay.
I'll look it up and get back to you.
Oh, that'd be great, Brian. Thanks. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I believe the one
Each
Alyssa
time we-
is.
Pardon?
Sorry, I was going to say the one you're talking about out of Harrisburg. That's PFM. That's the one that Alyssa is from. So I don't know if Henry's still there, but Alyssa is from that office out of Harrisburg.
Okay.
Yep. So is this something that you guys want to? I don't know if you have to decide on this now, or is it something that you guys want to think about and you know, further look into? But those are the recommendations. It's either, you know, move it into a Pliget account and make a little bit of money possibly over the next 6 years, or, you know, pay off all the interest now. And I lean towards paying it off now while we have the money and all that.
What is the cash balance now, and how does this affect our overall fund balance?
Good question. So we have, I'm glad you asked, Frank. So we have about, you know, $1.5 million ish in our main general fund account. We have this other 1.483 you know, balance. So, you know, 1.4 million in our bond account, in our people's security account. And basically this money, you know, was internally set aside for paying off the bond. So, you know, it's not being utilized for anything else. It's not being, you know, it's not in our general fund bank account. We haven't had a separate fund for this bond. It's just been sitting there in this, you know, separate bank account as we're going to use this money to pay off the bond. And it only requires, you know, 36,000-ish to transfer into it now. Of course, we would need to, you know, get final numbers from the bond council if we say we're going to do it. But, you know, it looks like it only needs about $36,000 extra into that account right now to pay it off to the point, you know, of completion, and still save that 130K over the next 6 years.
Okay,
But
thanks.
it's not money. Yeah, it's not money we set aside, or, you know, it's not money from the general ESSA account. It's money from the specific account we had. Our saying is for the bond.
Okay, we can talk about this again in a bit.
Okay, sounds good. I will move on then. So, with the, ARP funds, so, in discussion with our, council, regarding the ARP funds, we have the ability to, after doing some accounting procedures, to, account for these funds as general revenue and put it towards certain expenses. Ignoring those accounting procedures for the moment, this money can be used for pretty much all regular general government expenses or special projects, whether that's equipment purchases, grant matches, anything else that we would like to do with this money. These funds, as we get into some of our projects and some of our grants, we might see that we want to use some of this as a match, or we want to use some of this money for, some of these equipment purchases that are large. I wanted to make sure that all supervisors and everyone are good with that, or if there was other costs that they were hoping to utilize these ARP funds for.
Just the fire company and EMS radios is the only thing that we've committed to, and for future expenses, and that process is starting now because the county commissioners did pledge their third of the share.
Yeah.
So that's, I think when we budgeted for that or talked about it, it was somewhere around 250,000. It was going to be the maximum that we would be able to contribute.
Yeah, I thought I had a note somewhere that it might look like it might be 100,000 from us at this point. But I think that's a good thing that we'll need to confirm and write that down. And with these ARP funds, this may be a good way for us to, not that I want to burn through it, but utilize some of this to assist in our fund balance and prevent us from having to increase any of our revenue sources for at least a short period of time. That leads me to the next comment here. So on our fund balance forward, so our starting balance is not zero, but it's the total balance remaining at the end of the year. So this is our ESSA, this is our main general account, plus our People's Security account. The People's Security account, of course, we're using, that's, the 1.4 million, that would, if we're using that for the bond, that won't be here. Otherwise, our starting balance here would be, $3 million, at least expected, which is very high. We're not starting from zero. We're starting with the all the money we currently have that is not going to get spent this year. So with that knowledge in mind, some amount of this needs to be set aside either in its own fund or remaining in the general fund, depending on what DCED recommends with an operating reserve. So $800,000 is about almost 4 months worth of expenses for the township. The general government financial accounting office recommends for municipalities 3 months worth of expenses is a good amount of money to set aside. That's assuming that we can do nothing to get any revenue at all for 3 months. No money comes in from any of our sources, and we can still pay all of our bills and not restrict anything at all. So I do recommend that we will whether it's the separate fund or not. If it's a separate fund, we will move it to a separate fund. If it's in the general fund, we will set that aside as our starting balance and ending balance, and in future years will be that $800,000 that we're setting aside for these reserve and emergency expenses.
Makes sense.
So removing that from the fund balance, we do still have a good fund balance available. Of course, some of which will possibly be used for projects and possibly be used for grant matches, and some of which can be used to plug any budget holes if we have a budget hole this year. Revenue, I believe everyone is in agreement that the goal is to not raise taxes. I think that's always the goal. While of course maintaining and growing services. Just to review where we're at tax-wise, I'll go through the next few items talking about our revenue. So property tax rates out of the 16 townships that are in Monroe County, excluding boroughs who usually have a higher municipal rate because of economies of scale, they're not able to, raise as much money, so they have to raise their taxes. Smithfield has the second highest overall millage rate, with Middle Smithfield Township having the highest overall millage rate in the county. But this is really only due to the school tax rate, because Smithfield on a township millage rate comes in 12th place. It out of 1 through 16, we're 12th, heading towards the back, heading towards last place. There's only 4 other places that have lower municipal rates than we do. So most other townships have a higher municipal tax rate than us, just for reference. And those bottom 5 as well don't have any other additional fire or EMS taxes.
That's a question that I think takes a little more research, because many of these townships are served by EMS that does not charge them anything. And the other thing is, we have 4 fire companies we support. I think some of these townships don't have more than 1, if they have one, don't know. So I don't think it's a fair comparison. And I don't know the real statistics.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I don't want to comment on, is it right that they don't have it or not? I'm just saying, here's what is, here's the tax situation as it is right now. Not seeing whether or not, should there be higher taxes? Should there be, any of that? But I like what you're saying, Robert. And, that's definitely something to research. What do those other townships have? But in general, we are on a municipal level, we are, behind the pack of taxes. We're lower taxes than most places, except for school taxes here, which we don't control at all. That's what makes us second place only to Middle Smithfield Township. Brian, were you commenting something?
No, I'm just thinking,
Okay, good. I just saw her.
no comment.
Okay. So Middle Smithfield's tax rate right now, if we said, hey, we would never be the highest taxes, we would never go higher. We would never increase that much if we didn't have to at all. But Middle Smithfield tax rate, their millage rate is 0.95 mils higher than ours. But of course, any increases puts us at second place. Any increase that high puts us literally tied with Middle Smithfield, which I'm sure they operate fine and great, but that is just the highest millage rate in the county. So that's the tax rate there. That's the tax situation. It's not it's no easy increase. It's just so everyone understands the situation we're in. Zoning and construction permit fees. So I had wrote on this agenda here, fees are expected to double. After further conversation with Julia, I know fees are not expected to double, but we can increase our fees slightly with our zoning fees. Basically every year, we can increase slightly based on our increased costs. And that's something that we'll work on and review the process for that over the next few weeks to set those increases zoning and permit fees. So, and the reason that we would want to increase them is just because, we don't want everyone in the township paying for, one person's pool. We want the person that's getting the pool to pay the costs of implementing their pool rather than their neighbors chipping in to pay for that as well. And, by law, we are allowed to collect the zoning fees up to our costs for
Right.
permits. So that's an increase there. So fire EMS tax implementation. So this is something that has been discussed before my time and also now. And I know our goal is we don't want to fund any of our fire companies or ambulatory services or anything lower than they're currently already being served. But on the same token, we also want to equitably fairly fund the 3 fire companies and the 2 EMS services based on population or land area or something like that, so that it's more set in stone and less kind of, hey, we're going to give you $20,000 and you $5,000 just because. So I would love some input there of, how will we set that up? Is it going to be population based? Is it going to be, a combination of population and land area coverage based? I know, some other townships do this in different ways, and our goal, of course, is to my recommendation would be to, not necessarily implement an increased fire EMS tax unless we have to, but the goal is, if we can budget for this in the general fund, then we're very flexible with the funds still. Otherwise, fire tax or EMS tax can only be used for those specific things. Which if you have to raise taxes, great, but if not, if you can keep it in the general fund.
I'd like to comment on C and D at the same time here, the cable TV taxes. First of all, what we've traditionally done, just as kind of a trade-off in our own minds, is say we used to get, let's say, about $125,000 a year from the cable TV tax. I don't know what it'll be this year, but I think last year was a shade under 120.
It was like 118 or something like that.
So it's going down a little, but I still think probably maybe 4/5 of the people in the township probably subscribe to cable TV. I don't have any figures. I just look at my neighbors, and I'm the only one that's a cord cutter that I know of.
Oh, really? Wow.
So what they're doing is they're paying a 5% tax to us, and we're really using that for roughly saying that's what we pay for emergency services, even though we probably pay a little more in the general fund as well.
Right.
We've also
That's correct.
been in discussions with the fire companies, and they've been very cooperative towards saying we have to find a better system here. We also have a study underway of exactly what they're going to need in the future and things like that. As far as EMS, we're in a EMS quandary at the moment because EMS is claiming they're going broke this
Yeah,
year.
they asked us and several other municipalities for additional funding.
So
And looking at the 990 for the
Mhm.
EMS, looking at the tax forms, the tax filings for the EMS services, I can see that,
So, and as
for-
I
for
said,
one, yeah.
some municipalities pay nothing for EMS service. We do, that's another matter, but it's still there. I'm in favor of a fire EMS tax, but I'm also thinking that right now it's unfair to the people who pay it, that they have to pay it and nobody else does. Let's say everybody who's got cable TV has to pay it, which is essentially what they're doing. Anyone who doesn't pays nothing. I think it's
True.
much better to be able to get rid of the cable TV franchise tax and have a across the board tax, which for people that have cable TV now would cost them very, very little compared to what they pay. I mean, I don't have any statistics, but I figure most people have cable TV probably pay at least $150 a month. A lot of pay more than that.
Yeah.
And so that's about $90 a year that they're paying right now in taxes. So if we did a fire EMS tax, what's it going to be, $100? I don't know. So it'll be more for people who don't pay anything now, but it's not fair for people to do. So I'm saying that I'm in favor of both of those. And I also think that the time to do it is now. We promised the fire companies we're going to do something. We told the fire companies we don't want them out begging on the roads at every holiday to try to get enough money to buy tires. And they've been very cooperative. I don't think we can push this down the road any further.
One comment. A comment. Be careful
Yes.
with especially the fire companies. They make a lot of money, as Marshall Creek does, Shawnee a little bit. And I don't know that they want to institute a fire tax.
Well, Brian, we've talked to them, and what we said is, if we
I've
can
talked
get
to
you
them
the
also,
money.
though, Robert. Robert, I've talked to them once a week.
Well, yeah, well, sure, but at the quarterly meetings, that they invite all the
Okay.
supervisors to, they have asked, they don't want it necessarily to be named the fire tax, but they realize that the funding of the emergency services is something that they're going to need municipal assistance on. I don't know how much it'll be though, because the study that we agreed to participate in with JLN isn't complete yet. So I mean, I don't think it's feasible to do something for next year's budget if we don't know what we're going to need for another 4 months.
Well, whatever the study from JMS, I think it's for the future of how we're going to shape this, but I do think we need the money now, and we said to them, if we get you this money and we're going to do it another way, will you stop these road drives, which get them, according to Marshall's Creek, about $80,000 a year. I don't know if it's correct, but that's what they say. And they've said, yeah, we trade one for the other. We have a source of money where we don't have to do that. So
That's
I'm
news to me, Robert.
Well,
When I
you haven't been at the
excuse me,
meeting.
when I spoke to them, they were kind of in between on that.
Well, they're in between because they want to see what they're going to get.
Well, yes and no. They really feel that they still want to continue with their road stands.
I mean, they like the fundraise. They don't necessarily want to continue specifically with road drives. I think that fundraising is always going to be part of it because it's a community thing, but it shouldn't necessarily be the only thing. I'd like to see what the study, shows.
Yeah. And we should work to make sure that we're on the same page with the Middle Smithfield Township, especially.
Yeah, well, we are, because we're all in on the study. Us, Price, Delaware, Water Gap, Middle Smithfield.
We're in another study, but now we got to make a decision once we get the results.
Once we get the study, yeah. Once we get the study,
right.
I mean, it's too late to do it now for next year, in my opinion. I just don't think you're going to be able to have the legal turnaround to be able to, take one and not do another.
I think we could do it now, but that's my opinion. I don't think there's any reason to postpone.
Well, we're not going to do it today yet, right?
No, nothing's going to get done today. We're just talking about what our spreadsheet's going to look like next week. But I mean, if we can get numbers, great. Maybe Lucas, potentially you could get some figures on how many subscribe. I mean, that's like proprietary business info, but maybe they'd be willing to tell us how many people contribute the franchise tax without revealing all the subscribers.
So
And we can take a guess.
yeah, I want to talk about both of these and comment back to what Robert said as well, and as well with the road fundraising. I don't know that any tax implementation would say, hey, if we implement this tax, you're now going to be not allowed to fundraise on the road. I think they would still be allowed to do whatever they want if they want to do a road fundraiser. If they don't, I don't think anything says, unless you make a resolution that says you can't do a road fundraiser. Right.
Well, that's part of the problem, Lucas. A lot of people are really mad at that.
Right. And especially
okay.
Middle Smith, because
especially middle, yeah, right, Ron, Don. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
okay. So the issue I have with getting rid of the cable TV taxes, and not to play devil's advocate to Robert, but the problem is that Middle Smithfield taxes, they're already the highest. They besides them being already the highest, they're going to implement, let's say, a fire tax and take away the cable TV revenues. The fire tax is on everybody. Cable TV is on, it's really a luxury good now. No one needs, it's not water, it's not your house, it's not food or anything like that. It's cable TV. It's kind of a luxury. So to take away a tax on a luxury good, this is one of the one things that we're able to tax that's a relative luxury, where everything else is really has to be spread out, has to be evenly spread across everything. Earned income is spread out evenly. Property taxes are spread out evenly. To take away that cable TV taxes, we have to then raise our property taxes. We don't, the way we use it right now, we don't really, budgetarily wise, we don't really have the option to say we're going to implement a fire tax and take away a cable TV tax. It's like we're going to implement a fire tax and keep our cable TV tax because we still need it to meet our other expenses.
And,
You know.
and also, Lucas, we raised our taxes last year.
Yeah, no, and
Right,
and
for
I'm
the
glad
first time in 17 years, we raised our taxes. And if
Yeah, no.
we don't want to look at raising them again.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. And I'm glad you did raise it because, you know, if we said, you know, costs haven't gone up in the last 20 years or something, you know, expenses haven't gone up, that would be one thing. But expenses have and revenues haven't kept up, and we have more parks and we have more road work and we have, you know, more higher costs. So,
Well,
know,
that's accounting. That's accounting. Actually, our revenue has gone up consistently.
yeah, it's just I'm just not sure. It's not, you know, when I'm looking at the budget, it's not necessarily keeping pace with you know, with the increase in expenses. So, you know, to get rid of the cable TV taxes, which is one thing that we you know, one thing that we can tax that's on a non-necessary good. You know, I think it's a hard sell to sell it to the population. You know, I like what Robert's saying, that everyone should contribute for fire, and that makes sense. But you know, the reality is we need the cable TV tax not for fire. We just need it to, you know, keep up with everything else. So, you know, if we have to implement something else for fire, that's one thing. But to take a tax away,
This one is actually in the agreement. We did have an addendum when we renewed it last in 2020 that it is specifically for fire.
the cable
Yes.
TV tax.
Yes.
I think what Lucas is saying.
Fire and ambulance also, right?
But if that tax vanishes for any reason, you know, having that cable TV tax allows us to take that money and give it to the fire company. Were that cable TV tax to vanish, we would still need to take that money and give it to the fire company, but we wouldn't have a tax to offset that expense. I think that's what Lucas is
And it would be
saying.
a more equal tax on everybody, rather than just the people who like to watch ESPN sports.
True. You're exactly right. I think the issue is if we said we get rid of the cable TV tax, which is good to know that it has to be for, you know, in this case on this agreement, which we could write another agreement, right, that, you know, says if it wasn't going to be for fire taxes. Let's say we got rid of cable TV taxes, you know, tax on luxury goods, which I like taxes on luxury goods as much as we can, you know, to not tax the little guy, you know, the senior at home who doesn't work. You know, I want to tax them as little as possible.
I think one of the things we could do, and I'll be happy to do it, is get some real statistics from Blue Ridge about what the average bill is, what the average tax is, and so forth, and just see where we stand on this. And I'm sure Blue Ridge, more than anyone, would love to get rid of this tax, because then they can announce that your rate's going down.
Yeah, they would. You know, my concern is getting rid of it. We'll just end up saying in a year from now, hey, we need to increase taxes. And what's the first tax I would want to increase is not property taxes. It would be a tax on a luxury good. And this is pretty much the only luxury good we have that.
If you're going to take, you have to give. And I'm saying, give back the cable TV tax, because you got to take another one.
I like your thinking.
It's a logic that I think would go with residents to understand what we're trying to do here.
I like your thinking. I just don't know that we can take and
Well, let's get some stats and revisit.
Yeah. That sounds.
Yeah.
I think
Let's
we'll be good.
remember why did this tax come into being anyway? Blue Ridge agreed to pay it so that anything that happened within our community, we'd be able to cover some of the costs.
Right.
That'd be
You realize,
you know,
Brian, historically, when this was voted on with the federal government at 5% tax, the cable TV companies were supposed to pay it, but somehow they managed to construe this in a way that they didn't have to pay it; they could collect it and then pay it. So originally, they were supposed to be the ones that were done on this, not the.
So what they did is they raised their rates, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess.
I think
Well, it's a competitive market out there, Robert.
I think if you consider getting rid of it, you'd have to put in a fire/EMS tax to at least compensate for the same value.
Yeah. Well,
That's a good guess.
the first thing I'll do is
a lot of money.
I'd like to find out how much they actually collect and how much the average person pays for cable TV and how many people subscribe. Be good to know as we continue in these discussions.
I think
I
the one thing.
I think we had that. It might be a year or two old now, Robert, but it might be in the office. That's Lois to take a look.
If it's in the office, we'll never find it.
Well,
You're
that's true.
Yours.
But this is
Terrible.
great. This is great. We'll definitely need to do some further research, and I like what everyone's saying. You know, I think that my last comment on this will be, you know, $120,000 getting rid of that. You know, it might be that's 25% plus increase in property taxes. So you know, that's just something to keep in mind.
That's right. It's almost they're almost equal. 1 mil. Yep.
So moving on to the next one on this list, amusement taxes. This is something that I've had a discussion with Jim Hunt at Berkheimer about. They're willing to do, for free. They'll examine kind of how much revenue this might bring to the township. This is not something that we have any plans for at the moment. I just wanted to be able to bring this to the supervisors as something that if we need to implement a tax in the future, here's some possible way we can do it. So no data on that at the moment, but just something I wanted to.
What amusements do we have?
So amusements in this case would be ski resorts are not included. They're kind of exempted. But canoe trip down the Delaware is an amusement. For instance, a golf thing, a concert. Those are the types of amusements that they're referring to. So it's not necessarily a large sum of money, but they're willing to look at what's an estimate of what it could possibly bring to us if we need to look at other sources. But other than that, we don't have as a township we don't have many possible revenue streams. So this is just examining some of the other possible revenue streams.
You don't have a Camelback, right, Frank?
Right.
We got a Shawnee though.
But you can't tax skiing.
Well, you can get around it.
No,
Yeah.
no, you can't tax the ski. You could the amusement at Camelback is like the Camel Beach and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Well, and there's a lot at Shawnee Inn that might not be Shawnee, ski lodge that could possibly be included in the amusement tax. But again, that's something that this person from Berkheimer
Yeah.
will.
If Berkheimer can get us some data, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, an analysis for it. Traffic impact fee. This is again something that doesn't have any effect on our current budget. This is just something that I had seen another township had implemented. Fees for this would really be kind of public works related, and no budget effect at this time, but it's just another possible something that we could implement in for help with some expenses. Moving into expenditure discussions. So we already talked about expected increases of 5% across the board and for a lot of our expense categories. Looking at employee wages, as that's one of the largest expenses that the township has, besides equipment purchases and road work and stuff like that. I would recommend that the township implements a regular increase based on inflation, so based on the consumer price index, whatever the consumer price index is of November 2022. Every year. So most years this is 1% or 2% or something like that. Of course, this year it's closer to 7% estimated as of right now. We don't have the numbers yet for next month, but it's because inflation is so high. If you did not do inflation increases, it's it's kind of it's kind of a decrease in wages. If you're not meeting inflation at least. When even Social Security is increasing 6 or 7%, we need to we should be budgeting for, in my opinion, those inflation increases as well.
I'm against an inflation index, just to in general, because it can go up, it goes down, and what happens is it goes up, but if inflation goes down, it just doesn't, wages don't go down.
Yeah.
So I think you're better off to say an average of over a period of years and say it's gonna go up by so much. And look, right now, we're in a higher inflation period. For all we know, 6 months from now, we won't be, we just don't know.
So I do want to comment on that. So, with inflation, it's very rare that we experience deflation. Deflation being, we experience often the inflation rate decreasing, as in, the actual rate of increase is going down. But very rarely, only in 2008 recently, did we experience any deflation at all, where the value of money actually went up instead of going down. So, the reason that Social Security, and others do the, consumer price index increase is because, it is 1% or 2% or something every year, except for these years. But, the rate's never going to go down. If it was 7% now and next month, it's not going to go down to 2%. It's going to stop increasing by 7%, but it already increased by 7%. So, that rate we're looking at is for the past 12 months, it already increased by 7%. We're not looking at, what is it going to do? We're looking at, here's what it did already, make the increase for next year, rather than, we're not looking at future. We're not, is what I'm trying to say. We're not looking at future CPI. We're looking at, here's the rate of the increase or decrease that happened for the last 12 months. So even if you said, I didn't want to make this a policy, you can say, okay, well, wages went up 7%, or, costs went up 7%. Wages need to go up 7%. Costs went up 2%. Wages need to go up 2%. If any year comes upon a time where you say, if we had deflation in 2008, costs went down 0.5%. Of course, then you probably wouldn't want to say at that point, wages go down 0.5%, but you could. But that's very rare compared to, we're saying, you're looking at increases of, the historical 12-month period.
Well, I mean, let's budget based on that for right now and then see what happens. I mean, because we're going to have at least one of these in November, I would think.
Yeah, we can see what the rate is. I estimate it'll still be the 7% from,
It's about what we did last year. It's a little more than what we did last year. So hopefully the rate is a little different, but.
Be great if inflation would stop going up. So then the other item with employees that I think the supervisors need to look at, in a executive session or something like that is, performance increases. I'm not sure, budgetary wise, how to budget for some of this. So, I'll need some data from the supervisors on that. There's, plans that can be implemented on, 0% or 1.5 or 3% based on, different, levels of how you think the employee is performing, and I can send some reference material for that. But I would, make some, schedule some time to do that in an executive session or something like that.
Okay. Well, I can talk with Robert and Brian. We can find a time that works.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I didn't have on this list that I did want to bring up was, and this was, something that Brian had mentioned to me last we had touch base on, part-timer holiday pay. When I looked at it, it's a very minimal, it's $1,000 or $1,500 for the year. If we said, hey, part-timers or part-timers of a certain hour, of a certain minimum number of hours per week are able to get holiday pay for the hours they would have regularly been scheduled to work during those holidays. And I know some are already included. Some holidays are already paid for part-timers. So I think it's a very minimal budget effect, but I wanted to bring that up since that was something that was mentioned to me.
Are you?
And look, let me say, it really only affects one person. And it's the only person we have that doesn't get paid for holidays. Everybody else, including supervisors, we can work on. We could have worked yesterday. And we're flexible. And that goes for Mr. Luisi. If there's a holiday on Monday, Joe comes in Tuesday. The one person in the whole office and the whole operation doesn't get paid a cent is Lois Her. And
Well, I mean,
she would be the only one that would be paid for holidays. I think we should consider making her a permanent employee anyway.
I don't want to get into the personnel like that, but I have no issue. I have no issue with expanding the holidays because, in fact, in some cases, we have given holiday pay to certain, part-time employees starting, I think, last year with, intermittently, like on Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that. But I think it would be nice to expand it, the whole way. And, I have no issue. It has a very minimal impact. So
That's all, I know that's something that, supervisors probably have to make a resolution on or something like that,
I mean, you can budget for it, but I mean, I
Budget-wise,
I
it's very
think that, we just do that at the reorganization meeting, or we could even do it, for the end of this year to, later on, probably not tonight's meeting, but in a future meeting. I have no problem
Yep.
with that. I think that's nice.
Yeah, I didn't have that on the agenda here, but I wanted to mention that because, I know Brian had brought that up. So, yeah, it's a very, very minimal budget effect at all. So, yeah. Thank you.
Well, the reason I brought it up is I'm working with Lois, and the next thing I know, I call and there's no answer. And of course, where I am, I totally forgot about holidays. And
Yeah.
the next day when I talked to Lois, she said, "Yeah, I couldn't work." And I said, "What do you mean you couldn't work?" Well, I'm not allowed to come in and work a holiday unless I have permission. I'm told to. So I just thought that, the only person we've got there is a woman who's been with us a long, long time. It's the only person that doesn't get paid. As I said, Joe Luizzi, he takes a Monday holiday and he works Tuesday. And he's right where he should be. Same with us, supervisors. We had that flexibility, and I think, we're doing her a disservice. That's an individual. One person is all. Think about it.
No, I think we all just agreed. We all just agreed to it. There's no issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on then to the next item here is regular training and conferences. I believe in our previous budget we had about 1,000 for everyone. I'd like to increase this up to 1,250 per employee. And I'm happy to discuss this and review this. I don't know that all employees will use this full amount every year, but for conferences cost money, training costs money, and this is a very small budget effect.
I think it's a good idea.
For all full-time employees or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it probably won't be that high though, because I mean, with PSATs, we have quite a bit that we just subscribe to, and that's
just, we get to, if we get to, September, October, and we're trying to say, hey, we can't do these trainings because we don't have the budget. I think if we just said we have the budget for it, then we won't have to, we won't have to look at it, rather than saying, hey, of course, all these trainings and anything is still subject to, Julia's approval or anything like that, or supervisor's approval, but just the budget for a higher, possibility.
yeah, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
Okay, I think good. Moving on to then additional hires. So in the list here, so I know in my discussions with some supervisors that a new full-time staff person is expected to be included in the budget. This includes some zoning assistants, taking of minutes, social media, newsletter, website updates, and also reception work.
I'd like to say something about that, and I'd like to go back first to what's going on with our disagreement with our auditors, or at least two of our auditors, who have refused to give us an increase in pay for the last 2 years, and we're now in court with them over it. What I figured out is this: we're asking for a $2 raise. Is that what we're asking for, Jacob?
You're correct.
Okay. Well, in my case, if we got it, I'd make about $1,500 more. I calculate that the legal fees that we're paying just for this thing are worth more than that. It's kind of ridiculous, but what it really goes to is saying this: who runs this township? And right now, we have a, let's call it a corporate setup where we have a CEO, her name is Julia, and we have a CFO, his name is Lucas. And we have a very limited number of employees under them. They're running it. And what are the supervisors? Well, by the second class township code and what I've just described as far as what the pay is to supervisors, we're kind of, let's call us honorary board members. We come in, we weigh in on issues of what laws might be or what budgets might be. We have a certain amount of influence like a board member, but we're not supposed to be employees here. And if we were, the state would pay us like employees. And Brian, I'll go back to you. You ran this township almost by yourself for many years. And when I came in here, you were in here every day running it, and you were making a pittance for it. You know, you weren't even making what an employee coming in here as a full-time employee would make starting out. And you had, what, 17 years experience here? I mean, this is ridiculous. And my feeling is, if the state wants to treat us like we're part-time employees that are somehow thrust in here by the electorate to watch over things, that's what we are. This has to run as a corporation and has to run with people that are here that are paid to do it. Because I can say this for myself, you know, I'm not going to spend the time doing it for what we're paid. So we better have a complement of people who are doing it. And I think what we need is, we need another staff person in here with our CFO and our CEO to work with the staff and run this place. It's not the three of us. The state has made that clear, and we're not in the charity business. That's the end of my speech.
Good speech.
I don't know what that meant, but.
I understand. I mean, I do appreciate the idea that supervisors can, you know, pitch in and whatnot. But I mean, I think you're correct that, you know, we're not all supposed to be roadmasters and all that stuff. But I mean, I do think the other person, you know, I think would be beneficial, because there's a lot that everyone that's already, you know, it is full-time or even part-time other than us is doing. And I think that we can't really ask everyone else to do, you know, zoning clerk duties, the minutes, and, you know, doing the social media and the newsletter and the website. Before Carissa left us, I mean, we were in really great shape, but it's very difficult to, you know, ask other people to just spend 3 hours a week to do, you know, a really nice newsletter, because we had hundreds of people reading it and, you know, coming to our events and meetings that we had because of it. And reception, you know, that's, you know, that's been its own thing. You know, I think circumstances may be changing for all of us as supervisors next year with how we spend our time, but I think this person would be worth it. And it probably does save us time to be able to work on more important things if we had someone else that was really doing these things instead of ourselves. It is hard when you're not here all the time, because, you know, I'm not. I have other obligations, and, you know, I have other jobs. And you know, I think it is cumbersome to say, oh, can you come in for 3 hours to, you know, do this newsletter or whatever, if you're not going to have the time to maintain it consistently, like when we had someone dedicated to it. But if they did all of the odd jobs, that adds up to a decent position, you know. And same goes for the road crew, although it's different, you know, tasks, where, you know, able to pave more and do things more efficiently with more folks. I mean, I'm for both of those new positions, on understanding the you know, the personal changes that have to be made.
You're here. The only say footnote I'd make is it's not quite odd jobs. I think it's executive management, or at least somebody who's training to be executive management, which is, I think, what we really need here.
No, I think you're right, but like, I guess why I call it odd jobs, it's like, you know,
Yeah, all these things
four
we-
random things that, you know, any of us could do, but you know, you can't do on a part-time basis. It's just not realistic anymore.
Well said.
I'll comment that. I want to say, thanks, Robert, for the kind words about CFO. We appreciate it. You know, I will say as you know, this position seems to make sense, you know, I like what Robert is saying, what you guys are saying, you know, it's not necessarily that, you know, anything that the township needs to get done probably should not be, you know, anything day to day that needs to get done should not necessarily be a supervisor that has to do that. Because of, you know, pay and because of, you know, time and, you know, it's not a full-time role and you know, supervisors can focus
And the
on.
definition of what we are in
Yeah.
the second-class township code.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it makes sense, the budget for this position. The, you know, the salary discussion, you know, I put 5K here, including, you know, some other costs, but I think that kind of needs to, you know, be decided,
Yeah,
so I can
we
budget
can-
for that.
We can talk about that in our future executive session.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it's just, you know, something else to touch base on.
Road crew one is set by the,
Yeah.
you know, contract, so that's by the collective bargaining agreement, so that's.
Yeah, that one will be, you know, the exact number I'll pull from the, you know, the collective bargaining agreement.
No.
Any discussion items on the addition of a full-time staff person? Any other? Are there any discussions on the addition of a road crew member, assuming that, you know, tasks are increasing and this is something that, we seem to need to keep up with the, you know, road maintenance and.
This will
parks
let us
maintenance?
handle more internally. It's nice to not contract everything and save that for the larger paving.
I'll budget for that, as well then.
Let's get to these.
Yeah, we should look a little more into that though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, are you thinking of not getting an additional road crew member? Is that your, is that?
No,
what you're thinking?
I talked to Eddie first, and I know you guys must have.
Yeah.
or You wouldn't be this far along.
Yeah.
The other thing is, now we have another capacity, ergo more expenses. So keep that in mind also.
For
More
sure.
work should be done with another person. And
Agreed.
that it's going to cost us money, time and materials. That's
Agreed.
all.
No,
Yeah,
good point.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, I'll confirm that Ed does want that other person. He did seem to mention that before. Moving on to then additional minor expected service costs. These items have minimal budget effect, so I listed them separately from the larger projects. I wanted to review them to make sure that we were all on the same page with what I'm planning to budget for here. I want to use a rating system, a ranking system for the larger projects. I didn't plan to do that for these smaller items if we all just agree on these smaller items, but if we do need to kind of rank them in order of if we want to implement or not, you know, please do, you know, speak up and let me know. But otherwise, audit fees, you know, in planning to investigate, you know, changing auditors with the knowledge that, you know, as a corporation, you know, we would change auditors every 3 to 5 years, and in the act of, you know, transparency, we should follow those same rules as a township. So investigating changing our auditor is going to cost a little bit of money, a couple thousand above what you know, we currently pay. So that's something that I was going to budget for. QuickBooks expenses, paying for additional backups and you know, buying the newest version of QuickBooks. That's going to cost a little bit of money.
What would the backup be, Jacob?
So backups is in like regular backups all the time. So right now, you know, I can back up QuickBooks once a week, and the computer backs up, but you know, we're talking, you know, a few $100s a year would pay for, automatic backups, accessible, in a secure cloud, in case the computer fails, so we don't lose any QuickBooks data. That's what that one is.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. IT services, this is another one that, I would want to budget a slight increase for, either with our current service or with a potential new provider, to investigate making some changes to our technology regarding to our Outlook and use of OneDrive and SharePoint and some other Microsoft programs. It would make our Microsoft environment more secure, but that also could be a couple $1,000s above our current IT costs per year. So I wanted to list that here as well. If we need to discuss that at all, if not, it's just something I'll budget for.
I think that makes sense. I think we could probably get more for what we're paying.
I agree.
Awesome. Okay, then computer monitor upgrades. That's we had a bunch of that in the budget last year. I think we actually maybe need less of that this year. I think last year we had like $25,000 for computers and stuff last year. So I don't see, so that will actually kind of decrease from last year, but I expect we'll still have some minor costs. So I will plan for some minor computer upgrades and stuff as well. Monitors and stuff like that.
Makes sense.
Something that I believe in discussion with Robert had brought this up of some additional community event funding. To the tune of a couple $1,000s. Robert, I don't know if there's anything more you want to talk about with that, but it seemed like a very minor budget item that we can easily include.
Well, let's look at the figures. But I mean, it would be nice, if we did have other things in the community, particularly as we hopefully have parks set to open or new features set to open. Would be nice. Brian and I talked about having like a community, well, potlucks are probably still out, but Brian and I talked about having one of those types of events like Mount Pocono did pre-pandemic. So maybe one of those in the future.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at a couple $1,000s for that line item. So okay, perfect. All right, these next projects on this list, as you see, they total up to $362,500. With these items, if there's any large projects or anything, over 5K, anything at all that anyone thought I missed, I tried to connect with everyone to get some projects. So get some projects. If I did miss anything, please bring it up at the end and we'll be able to discuss it. What my goal with these is to rank them with the understanding that we might not be able to afford to do all of these projects this year. So, all the supervisors can agree, but it's totally okay if they don't agree on the ranking system. And I'm going to, combine everyone's votes. So basically you can vote either 1, 2, or 3, or you could say 0, meaning we don't want to do it. So 0 is we don't want to do it. 1 is we need to do this year. It's, pretty much a need. 2 is we can push this off. And 3 is this is kind of like a wish list item. It's not very important if it gets done this year or next year or anything like that. 3 is the first stuff that we're going to cut. So does everyone understand, 1 being the most important, 3 being the least important, and I'm going to write this down for the, for Robert, Jacob, and Brian, and then I'll kind of rank that, and then we'll rank these projects off of their scores, and we'll see, if our budget can't afford it, we will start cutting things from the bottom and move on up.
Lucas, maybe
Yes.
1 through 4. Just my way of thinking.
I like what you're saying. It would just be one more. I was just using 0 because 0 we won't think of it 1 through 4, but it's really 0 through 3 because 0 we'll just get no score attached to it if you don't want to do it.
Okay, all right.
Lucas,
Yeah.
have you had any discussions with general code about what these things would actually cost?
I haven't had good discussions with them yet. I haven't had a chance. So, these are estimates of something I think it might cost, but
Well,
yeah.
if you give them a call, you can find out
Yeah.
exactly what, because I think interactive zoning maps and a code update are all in the same package. But I probably half of what you're talking about. I don't know.
No, if it is, I love that. And I'm glad you bring that up. I'll have to give them a call. Yeah, I'll definitely, and I would say as we're going through this, I'm glad you brought that up, Robert. These numbers next to these items are fully estimated. So, don't exactly rank them based on, the dollar amount. Rank them based on, do we need to do this or not? And then I'll find an exact dollar amount, and then we can include that in the budget and see how it comes out.
Don't forget with the zoning vehicle.
Yeah.
We've been offered at least $20,000 from the American Museum of Ancient Zoning Vehicles.
Oh, nice, okay.
For the old-
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, all right. I was
Exactly.
gonna say, wow, I didn't know and then,
I was like, a grant. I love it. Give me some grants, Robert.
yeah.
Okay.
There are grants. There are grants. I will say, just
Yeah.
before we start ranking, there are definitely grants available that could pay half or more of the cost of a new vehicle if it's like an electric or hybrid vehicle. I mean, the current one's rusted out. I don't know if it's gonna pass inspection next
Yeah.
year.
And I'm glad you say that, because what we'll end up doing is the things that rank number one, things that rank number two, we will end up completing these, whether we can fund them via grant or whether we can fund them via our, fund balance or in our budget. But we will, investigate grants for anything that we know we have to do. Definitely. Great point.
Okay.
Starting with camera system upgrade / replacement. So this is in regards to the cameras at the township building.
It's outside cameras.
Yeah, this is a project that was mentioned to me. Again, my estimated costs, but don't focus too much on the estimated costs. Just focus on, you rate this as, and please discuss as needed. Do the supervisors rate this as, 0, we don't need to do this. 1, we need to do this right away. 2, we can push this off. Or 3, kind of it's just a wish list type of item.
I would say it's not like a wish list. It's something we could definitely push if we had to. But there is like one camera out, and the system that receives the video footage is like 20 years old. So, and borrowed from Sundance.
And it's operating Windows 7.
Yeah.
Which is now a huge security liability.
Yeah.
So while it can be pushed off, board, if you are willing to deal with this would be a very good security update.
Yeah.
We've also had discussions, our cameras are not placed in the best areas.
Yeah.
Where should an event occur, we'll be able to viably use them to maximize their potential. Which does actually feed into the next thing, which is the microphone system. Having the bulletproof glass at the front of the office is a very safe feature. But unfortunately, with that amount of thick glass, it does make it a little bit difficult to hear people. So to ensure that we can continue to use that and keep our staff behind that glass, I will highly recommend that we invest in the microphone system so we don't have staff people going to the door to answer questions, where then a breach can occur, worst case scenario.
I think both of those make a lot of sense.
We want to take a picture of Marshall Falls for a calendar, remember those things? And they're afraid to go on because it says no trespassing.
No.
Oh, no, they can't.
Yeah, no, I think both of the camera system and the reception microphone, I think those are both ones, get those done, right? Robert, Brian? The camera system and the reception microphone, I think those are both ones.
Jacob, the entire system, Julia said they're pretty antiquated.
Yeah, the cameras are quite old. And the system is actually probably the worst problem. The cameras themselves, you could probably just stand to upgrade one, but if you upgrade one, upgrade all. But the issue is that the system that stores the footage is on an operating system no longer supported by Microsoft as of like 3 years ago.
I spoke to Sundance, it was probably 5 or 6 months ago at this point, and he said to upgrade one facet of the system, we will need to upgrade the entire system because it is so antiquated.
Any idea what costs, Julia?
It really depends on what the board wants to go with. If we're going for, full color cameras with audio components, that's one thing. If we go with black and white, but all of those specific discussions and what the board wants need to be had in executive session for security purposes. So we should not discuss that further here.
All right, that makes sense. We're gonna have a comprehensive one soon then. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but perfect then if all three supervisors agree need, everyone is rated a 1 for those first 2 projects on camera system and microphone, as this is a need, do this next year. The next item on this list, this is a capital improvement plan. So this is, going back to the discussion of earlier of how, we have a lot of, we have many assets that are depreciating every year that we don't have a set plan in place to budget for those, improvements and those, those maintenance costs on our roof or our building or things like that, repainting stuff, so creating a comprehensive capital improvement plan for all of our township assets, vehicles, structures, everything, with an engineering consultant is something that I think is highly important, because then we'll be able to, really budget for these expenses. We should not have, it's not great to have, millions of dollars of depreciation and not have millions of dollars to, pay for those expenses right now, because it means kind of just pushed off down the line. So, I would like to budget for that as a need would be my recommendation for the third item on this list.
I agree.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Interactive zoning, slash the GIS maps. It could go hand in hand with the code updates if you want to talk about the 2 of them together. Is this a need? Is this we could push off 1 year if we had to, if we couldn't afford it, or it's a wish list? What are your thoughts there?
I would rate that a 1. I think we really need to clean up our whole.
I think that'd be great. I mean, would you agree that you can't figure out anything about zoning independently? You almost always have to have a meeting or an appointment, which then prevents Ken from actually enforcing any of the rules.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice if folks could actually find out their uses for their own property just by going online. I know a couple municipalities in the county have done that, Middle Smithfield, Mount Pocono. I think some others, I think Toby Hannah's looking at it too.
Well, and what's happened with our code publishing is that the 2 companies that used to do it have merged. We used to have, I think, is it the New General Code, I think?
Yeah.
Ours, they've merged with code publishing. Code publishing has a lot more robust systems to be able to handle this stuff. So the plan is, I asked them to call you because they haven't, but to see what it would cost into over the next 6 months upgrade. Yeah. Would include the GIS maps.
Yeah. Riley called me, but no code publishing called me yet. So. Okay, yeah. 1 sounds good if you guys are saying 1. I caution everyone from voting for 1 for everything on this list, but no, one is great.
I love 2.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, that sounds good.
Next, you have a zoning vehicle. I think we all know that our vehicle's in bad shape, but it is like a 2004. It has had.
And if I may comment on this one, we were slated to update the zoning vehicle, and then the truck, the F600 died.
Right.
So the board's plan was to fund that truck because we needed it for snow removal purposes, and then get the zoning vehicle updated the next year.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, unfortunately for you, Lucas, I would probably.
The 1, isn't it?
It had. Yeah. They have used like spray insulation to keep it from failing in inspection. I do think we're at the point now on that one.
No, it makes financial.
We might
sense.
be able to get like $100 for it with the crazy market these days.
Does everyone vote a 1 on the vehicle? It does, it has seen better days.
Yeah, I don't want to go crazy though. I would like to. I would put it as a 1 with the caveat that, you know, some of the green vehicle funding that the state has is still available, and we should
Sure.
absolutely pursue that.
Yeah, the hope is for all of these items to, you know, search for grants for them. But definitely, you know, if we don't, with the knowledge that it's needed anyway, we will end up, you know, budgeting for it, if, you know, assuming we don't get a grant.
Right.
But okay, if everyone's 1 there. The next item again, this next item, the new road vehicle for $200,000. This is a loader, recommended by Ed, as something that we need to purchase. He had actually recommended 2 vehicles, but he said we can, you know, we also need a $250,000 tandem dump truck. But he had put that as something, you know, it can wait, you know, till, it doesn't have to be next year, it can wait a year.
What do we need the new loader for?
I don't have data from Ed on what
Yeah.
exactly we need it for, but he said it was a need. So, yeah, good. I like your thinking, Lindsay. That's a good question. Something to investigate.
I would love to not spend 200,000 on that, because then when we need an actual like new dump truck, because you know loaders are not. I don't think they're that bad. Did he give you the price of 200,000?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I would put that at like a 2.
I agree.
Okay.
2, unless we can get one that like you know used.
So maybe I can go back to Ed and investigate some used options. That was a great idea. All right. So 2. Robert, is your vote as well a 2 for that one? Okay. Next one is picnic tables at parks. I think this line item can also include some other benches or grills. I was told there's some need for these items at some of our parks. How high is this need? Can it be pushed off or not if we have to push something off?
There are definitely some tables that are straight up broken, so we definitely have to replace a couple. I think a few of them are in regional parks, right, Robert? I think that, well,
Ones at
Mount
Mount
Nebo,
Nebo,
yeah.
I think looked like they were cast offs from the county prison.
I think
Well,
we
they
could
used
stand
to
to
burn
fix.
them.
Yeah. I think we could at least fix, you know, a couple of those, and just repaint some of the ones that we have.
Maybe something to look into what they cost, because, you know, these huge metal ones, it may not be necessary. The ones that are wood are a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
You could paint them. If you look at the ones they have out in front of Mad Apples, which are never used, the
Right.
fact that they're painted is really nice.
Maybe we should try to buy theirs. Are they still open?
I don't think so.
I never see them.
But, you know, the only
That's a good
real
point.
requirement is that you can get a wheelchair up to the end of it. And you can do that with several of the wooden ones too. I don't know, let's see what we can get for 5,000. I don't know.
Awesome.
How would you guys rate that as, you know, is that a need at a max of 5K, or is that a
All right.
Well,
I'm
Look
willing to.
at, Jacob, Middle Smithfield is in the process now of going up and getting prices for tables for their new facility, where their office is in the library.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we can talk to Chris Rain, see what he's
Yeah.
got.
Yeah.
See what the hell he digs up.
There may also be some local grants for that, you know, like
Yeah.
like a St. Luke's kind of grant, you know, those $2,000 grants for some.
Yeah.
Maybe. Sure.
Okay, I'll rate everyone a 2 for that one then.
Okay.
Perfect. And that makes great sense. The next one on this list is AED defibrillators. This is something that Lois had brought to my attention with our AEDs. There's like a warranty date and they expire, so we probably have to get new ones so that there's warranted again. To
Oh,
further research.
oh,
into that.
Rachel Moyer.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
She'll do the
yeah.
best price-wise, and she'll let you know, excuse me, if you have to update it or get a new one.
Roger that. Thanks, Brian. Yep, I'll definitely do that.
Thank
With that, go ahead.
No, I say I have a phone number if you need it.
Okay. Yeah, if you can send that my way, that'd be great.
You bet.
I think that's definitely a one in my book.
So, right, it seems to be whatever the cost may be, you know,
Yeah.
it seems like it must be a one.
The Little League just got a new one through Rachel
Well, to
Moyer's
make
group.
it at least a one for people of my
Yeah.
age.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I'm putting that as one for everybody. This next one here is related to development of an engineering plan for a community center. I don't know that I can speak to this best, but maybe Robert can give some more data on you know, what this would be used for and how this would look. Rob, yeah, go ahead.
I would say what we really need is an architect to work with us on a basic plan and elevations. Engineers don't do elevations, and that's what you want to have, make it look like something you can show to people, so this is what we're gonna do. Brian, who designed this building? Schoonover or whatever? Who is it? Brian?
Oh, good. You mean our building?
Yeah,
Schoonover, yep.
well, you think they would do some preliminary work on what a community center might look like? I don't know how much they charge for that, but usually architects charge towards a percentage of the project if it gets built, not by the hour. So I don't know what we could range, but it doesn't seem like we'd have to put 25,000 into something like that.
Yeah, if you think it's a lower cost, you know, great.
But that's what we need. It's like, okay, this is one alternative. This is what we can do. This is kind of the cost parameters. And if we were going out and looking for grants, at least we'd have that to be able to say what we're doing, intending here.
And Robert, you're talking about the waterfront?
Yeah,
Yep, okay.
no.
You
It's
could,
just really basic.
Schoonover is gone. But
good.
Wayne Vanderhoof would be the guy to call.
Okay,
And
Wayne.
they, you know, excellent relationship with them. Over the
Great.
years, he used to live here.
that's perfect. What's his last name? Wayne?
Vanderhoof.
Brian?
Yeah,
Vanderhoof.
Wayne Vanderhoof.
Robert, is that something you'll be able to do a little further investigation on to determine kind of cost wise, just to know, you know, if I call, I'm not going to know exactly what I'm asking for. Okay, with that data, assuming the cost might be even, you know, lower than expected, you know, how do you guys rate this this project?
I'd say 2, but
Okay,
Sure.
buy that.
All right.
Cool.
All right, the last one on this list, actually there's a couple more I'll probably bring up, but the last one here is ash tree removal investigation. So knowing that we have all these dead trees around, developing a plan, whether it's a forester, whether it's someone who would be the good contact for this to you know, remove the trees that are in danger of falling on the road or power lines or stuff like that.
Power companies are already taking care of that, or they should. But 10,000 will do nothing. I mean, we need something like 50,000 to even get started. So I guess
Really?
you should make that a 3 and say, investigate if there's something out there as a grant that we can get from somebody, because this is a huge safety issue all over the state.
all over the state. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with it at 3.
I'd make
I
it
would
4 though.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see, you know, what it would cost. I mean, it would be nice to know which ones we could clear like internally, just along paths and stuff, because we don't, you know, we care the most about the ones that could hit people.
Well, it's the paths in our parks, but it's also our roads, for instance, Mount Nebo or Fawn Road or Brushy Mountain, where those can come down at any time on a car. Just don't know.
That's true.
They're all, if they die within 3 years, and then they're just gonna fall over at some point. So a good windstorm. So, yeah. That's the problem. They're everywhere. I was just out in the western part of the state. They're there too. You know, the entire state.
That's what, it came west to east, Robert.
Yeah.
And I guess about 4 years ago, we were warned
Yeah.
that we're going to get hit with it.
But there's
And it
almost
would be
nothing you can do. There's,
Yeah.
if you get it early enough, supposedly you can inject the tree or something. But I don't think there's much of a method of doing anything because you don't know if the tree is diseased until it's too late.
Well, and
Amen. That's true. And that's
no.
not cheap.
Emerald ash borer.
Yeah.
And board, just a food for thought on this one. You did make the decision, I believe it was last year, to purchase that cherry picker. So
That's true.
if
We
you-
have it.
We do. We have the technology. So if we do have the opportunity to hire additional staff for Ed, this might be able to take a project that we have the equipment for, we'll have the manpower for, and he might be able to devote regular staff time to taking care of this problem. So we don't have to outsource it as much.
I'd be careful on that. These guys are road people. They're not tree cutters.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, their priority first is roads. But I can definitely see Ed being willing, if he's got the time and the resources, to take trees down between 7 and 3 instead of 2:30 in the morning when they get the call from the police.
Yeah.
That, of course, is entirely his prerogative, how he'll use his staff in that manner, but that might be a factor that'll help mitigate costs on the project.
If Brian is right, they're road people. If you
Yeah,
see the guys
absolutely.
that cut down trees, they're different.
They're terrible. They don't know what the hell they're doing with the saw. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't know. Eddie does, but God almighty, you're going to have your roadmaster up in that cherry picker risking his life. I don't know. We already hired Strength Tree Service for a couple of things, and up at right next to us, actually, on Red Fox Road, took down 3 trees, I believe. Robert, was it, that we had flagged? And I thought maybe Eddie could do it or someone else, and he said he'd rather have a professional tree service do it. So something we got to look into this all.
Yeah, and Ed worked in tandem with Strunk. They took the trees down and then our road crew cleared them. So that's also a possibility to help mitigate the cost as well.
That's a possibility, yep.
The conundrum is where the money comes from to do what we have to do, because it's probably $100,000 for the township just to take down what's obvious that has to go down. It's a lot of work.
Now, is this budgeting for the actual takedown, or my assumption is this might be budgeting for the plan for the takedown? You know, working with a forester or something like that is my, you know, assumption here.
Well, they've got studies. I forget the name of the group, but Robert may know it. And they've ID'd most of the ash trees. Actually, they came to us 2 years ago and asked for permission to come onto our properties, meaning our parks, not a roadway.
Tree Smiths, was that it?
No, they're crazy. I shouldn't say that. Tree Smith did work for us, but no, they didn't do an inventory, Robert. This was the state.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
they ID'd them all across the whole state.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah,
Right.
it sounds like work was already done then.
Well, let's
And
base it on
then
the,
they tag them. They have a red tag and I think a blue tag. Red means you gotta go. Blue, you got some time. I don't know. Anyway, we may have literature on that, but if not, there's an agency we can call. And maybe there's money.
Yeah, that sounds great. That said, we've reached the end of this.
With all that data, how do we rank
We all
that?
said 3.
Three?
Great.
Are we-
Hey, thank you very much. I'm gonna check
Robert.
out. I'm
Okay,
checking
well,
out. Jacob,
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Good to hear you.
hey, good to talk to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
When's the next meeting? When's the next meeting?
All right, yeah, all right, hold on, let's get the meeting back in order, please.
Yeah, one second.
Yeah, so our next session is October 26, 2022 at 10 a.m. But that said, before we end this meeting, we have to hear public comment.
And I have one other item as well, still.
One more,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so I ranked ash tree removal investigation as a 3. Assuming we were all agreed there based on what everyone said.
Yeah.
The one I didn't have on this list, which I forgot to add, was Kings Pond culvert replacement. That's about $80,000. So I had missed that from including on this list because that was something that was budgeted for previously, but with the knowledge that we will continue to need the budget for that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that is still at a 1.
I'm gonna go 1, we have the money.
Well, and to further that, the board approved telling John Tressler to move forward.
Yeah.
So I actually, a few moments before this meeting started, got the timeline from his office. So we are looking at receiving bids November 9th for that, opening bids on November 9th, awarding it on the 23rd, with a notice of completion, May or June of 2023.
Okay.
So that's in line, ready to go, and we're fine there.
That's Kings Pond.
Kings Pond Culvert, yes.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep, so that was the only thing I had, unless anyone else had any other projects they wanted to bring up. That was all I had for this meeting. With the knowledge that I will then be working on our Excel budget, and we'll have that for everyone to review for our next budget session.
Awesome. That said, do we have any public comment?
Do you have any public here? You're not public, you're an auditor.
Yeah, but I have a few comments.
Okay.
You know,
Go ahead.
this is that first time for the meeting and budget. But, I always was wondering last year when I was reviewing it, why we never had a capital improvement plan. But, this is the job for passing that. Second is, the taxes for the fire EMS tax. A lot of people don't have the cable to read. I know that living in my community, we don't get tax internet. I don't know if there's a franchise fee for the internet for it,
Only on the cable.
only the cable. So I don't know how that would really balance out, because a lot of people is streaming online with the internet.
Right.
Second, fire tax, I totally understand. I know we do have 3 fire companies that come to the area. But the EMS service, I kind of disagree with this tax as a taxpayer, and I'm pretty sure as a board of auditors too. Because we don't know which EMS is coming, like how would you clarify?
Oh, there's a service area map, just the same way as there is with fire.
Because about time the outsourcing EMS comes and goes to the hospital, there are some health issues going on and it's kind of late. That's what I'm just saying, because the hospitals are more prompt.
Well, there's different methods, but I mean, we do have 2 EMS services. Well, I mean, it's something we have statistics on, it depends on who's available first and who's closest by. They go to their primary dispatch, and in your case, in like Valhalla, that's going to be Bushkill EMS, but if they're not available, then they send Suburban, and if they're not available, Pocono Mountain Regional potentially, and then occasionally the hospitals, but it really is all dependent upon,
Kind of determined by the what is it, command center, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
For 911, who dispatches, decides who's available, who's not. But it is true that where we are, we're more accessible to more services than, let's say, Middle Smithfield is, because they're just farther out. There's less there.
right?
And then, I just had a question about the amusement taxes, which I think it's a good idea, but, I was just curious about the TV board. Why they can't be taxed?
The PA House and Senate has put certain rules on raceways and ski resorts, mostly because of their competition with other states, saying that, hey, we don't want to add this extra tax to them. Is it right to do? Good question. But they've said, you can't add these amusement taxes to these because we want to be competitive with other states that don't have it.
Right.
Yeah, but they tax us too, when buying a ticket.
Well, you pay a sales tax, but that goes to the state's general fund.
But they didn't want the fees to increase, and they, currently have excluded ski resorts and raceways and stuff in some manner. But that would be, only the state, House and Senate could change it.
I kind of disagree with that because
Talk to your state representative.
I will name on this matter, but I'm just saying, like, they keep increasing their rates and rates and rates.
Sure.
Every year for the season pass or their,
It'd be great if we can get some of that.
Yeah.
Good point. And what you were saying earlier too with the EMS, I know there is that map that has, so if we the split funds, there's a map that shows, here's the primary service area for one, here's the primary service area for another. So the fire departments and the EMS services all have that for the township of, this is the primary provider. So we would probably end up splitting funds in standardized way based on that, primary provider map. Whoever is the primary provider for a certain area will get a certain percentage of the funding from the township based on that status.
okay. And then my next would be, Brian wants schools to get paid on holidays, they also just close. But as, working as a part-timer in any company, no one gets paid.
There are some companies that do part-time. Starbucks is perhaps the most popular that does that.
I'm just saying, and I'm like, I don't know how our taxpayers feel about that.
Well, they can vote.
It's not in their contract agreement. It's up to you guys, but then you're gonna get that now this last from the public.
The cost of it is, from a financial perspective, not from a is it right or wrong perspective, but just from my end of a financial perspective, we're talking about, $1,000 in total for the year, or $1,500 in total for the year for all costs included. So it's not a large cost. So I think it's almost, not worth the debate and discussion on some of these items. I can say in a previous role for myself, they did pay part-time staff based on, holiday pay for hours they were scheduled to work on a holiday. If you're scheduled to work 5 hours on a holiday, even if you're part-time, you're paid for those 5 hours. I don't think it's unheard of to do that. But I know it would be up to the supervisors really to make that decision.
Okay, so the board of supervisors, you guys are part-time employees too.
The Board of Auditors has to approve holiday pay for supervisors, and that's something that we've never had. So not something we're asking for.
No, but maybe like, if what you said on like 1,000 or 1,500, wouldn't be like end of the year or something, just only holidays for?
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens.
You're saying, sorry, I want to make sure you said like implement a bonus or something instead you said, or?
Instead of paying her for the holiday, you just put an additional balance the 1,500 a year.
We can certainly present the option.
Balance the option of doing you know?
I guess the question is then if you do that, do you give other evil bonuses?
Hold on, we gotta stop. Robert just went to
Yeah.
the room, so we are out of quorum right now.
Mute us for that second until he's back. You're back. We can resume business. We lost our quorum when you left the room. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, so I was saying, yeah, bonuses, that's an interesting idea, Vicky, definitely. It might have to be something that then, if we give someone a bonus, then you give other people bonuses, like, it might get, hey, they got a bonus, why not I get a bonus? So it might be like that, but that's a good idea too.
This is the first time I heard from you that tourists are allowed, and that's why nothing's being updated on social media, and then you guys don't have property to the public.
Intermittently.
How come, when did she leave and how come?
We can't discuss personnel matters in a public meeting. She left in May. She left in May, and we had been doing some of the work internally, and we still do, the newsletter. It's not exactly what I would hope for, which is why we are looking for a replacement in the next budget. But that's all I can say in a public meeting. But yeah, it was late May, mid-May, actually. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait, Leslie, have one question.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a comment made about the road crew, that there may be more kind of materials needed. Is that because there will be more work, or just for just keep up with the work that's already happening?
I think it's keeping up with the work. I don't foresee actual, I think there could be some changes, perhaps with our parks maintenance. If we have enough staff, we can.
Yeah, if I may, I believe the concept was if you have more people, you will be able to get more things done.
That's what I
Which means
thought.
if you have 7 people, maybe you can pave one additional road, which means
Yeah.
you'll need the additional materials for that. But by that same turn of point, we just got like a new leaf truck. So instead of worrying about using and acquiring additional resources that will cost the township additional fees, perhaps we'll be able to better utilize the resources that we already have that are staying stagnant because we don't have sufficient personnel to staff them currently.
Awesome. Great.
Are we up to 6 now, or are we still looking for it?
We are still currently looking to fill this position. We had it filled and for good, lost someone who really fantastic opportunity.
All right. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
Make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Luffenheim, second by myself. All in favor? Aye. You have to say aye, otherwise the meeting's
I'll
over.
say aye.
Okay.
Aye, aye.
We're adjourned at 11:58.